We've all had it, or still have it, that burning need for that new piece of gear that will make everything better. Better photography, better music, better art, better you. But we know that need is a want, but it's still eating at you in the back of your mind. That piece of gear will make me better. Right? This video started out being a when gear matters and when it doesn't matter video. But as I was researching my talking points, I realized this has been done to death. The point has been made, sometimes gear matters and sometimes it doesn't. Mostly it matters when there are technical requirements for something like wildlife or sports or high speed. But at the end of the day, you're in charge of you and you'll decide. No video on YouTube is going to make you change it. Sometimes this is just something you have to learn the hard way over time, like I did. So let's talk about some of the unexpected byproducts of a few pieces of gear I most certainly didn't need, but ended up with anyways. The M6 was my dream camera. If I could have one, that'd be it. But I didn't have the money. It was a luxury, and I was really hesitant to order one online and be disappointed in some way with how it was worn or potentially broken. I also had a film camera, but every time I went to my local camera store, I'd casually walk to the back section and take a look at what might have shown up. Fast forward to April 2022, and I'm getting ready for almost 3 weeks in Europe, Spain, England, Scotland. So with my wife in tow, I swing by the camera store to grab some film before we leave the next day. And I take my usual stroll to the used cabinet of cameras, and guess what's there? A like-new Leica M6. It was perfect, literally and figuratively. And the timing. But I still didn't have the money for this sort of luxury. I just walked in to get film. That's already expensive. I couldn't come out with a $4,000 camera while my wife's waiting in the car, or could I? I spent some time thinking about it, and I mean a lot of time, and decided now or never. I couldn't believe I'd actually have the camera of my dreams for this trip. I took 36 rolls of film with me. 36! I was beyond excited. Needless to say, it wasn't fun to go through airport security with, and besides one scary moment with 2 armed guards in Barcelona, it wasn't all that bad. But why was I so excited? I was ready to take my old Canon the day before, which was technically a better camera for the trip. It had autofocus, I could rewind the film with a tail, it was way cheaper so I wouldn't be worried about it at all. I think regardless of the M6, I would have shot a bunch of film that trip. But what happened after is what's more important. I kept shooting. I shot more film after I bought the M6 than I had ever before, but I wasn't more enabled. Gear will never equal skill, but shooting more made me a better photographer. Not because the camera was better, but because I enjoyed the process far more. And that made it worth every penny. Okay, this is going to start sounding like a sponsored video soon, and I promise you it's not, but it does build off the M6, so stay with me. So while the M6 inspired my film photography, the digital side was definitely not. I had a very capable Fuji X-T20, and it did fine. I mean, it was no X-T3. But the problem was, I seldom reached out for it, and I wasn't a fan of Fuji lenses, the ergonomics of the camera. Nothing about shooting with it made me want to shoot more. The camera was fine, the image quality fine. It just wasn't for me. So having the Leica bug, I started looking at the Q2. But the Q3 was on the horizon, and I just wasn't sure I wanted a fixed lens system, so there was a lot of back and forth conversation in my head. But I really wanted whatever my digital camera was to complement my M6 experience. I wanted them to be able to share lenses, I wanted similar muscle memory, and the same physical, I need a different word for experience. I was obviously leaning towards the digital M, the M11, but if I thought the M6 was expensive, and this was twice the price of the Q2 with no autofocus, what was I even thinking? This won't make me a better photographer, the pictures won't be that much better. Now, I know I'm comparing the X-T20 to the M11, it doesn't make sense, but stick with me here. When the Q3 finally dropped, it was more expensive than the Q2. There was no price drop. Not only that, the Q2 price wasn't going down. If anything, they were going to go up too. Now the M11 didn't seem that unreasonable. So, f*** it. I pulled the trigger. And it did not disappoint. I know I'm going to sound like some sort of Leica fanboy here, and maybe that's what this is, but I mean this with every bit of my photographic soul. I've owned and shot multiple Canon, Sony, and Fuji cameras, and the M11 was the first camera I've ever had that felt like it was truly made for photography. Nothing to get in the way, nothing unnecessary, pure photography, from the moment I held it. And much like the M6, I shot more and more and more and was enjoying every moment of it. I hadn't enjoyed the post-processing of digital photos ever until the M11. Balance had been restored between my film and digital cameras. That camera I didn't need suddenly breathed life into what had become pretty stale. The circle was complete. So what are you getting at, Olaf? What's the beautiful byproduct of this unnecessary and expensive purchase besides megapixels and your feelings and taking more photos? The majority of my professional career has been in photoreal compositing, and by having this mirrored system of digital and film photography, I was suddenly able to understand the differences between the two. The actual differences, not some subjective thoughts, first-hand truths. I made a whole video about it, check it out if you haven't already. But that was never the plan, a deeper understanding of the capabilities and limits of film and digital, not a bad byproduct of some gear I didn't need, or maybe I'm just reverse justifying something to make it sound like it was a good idea. Months ago, I was watching a piece of art that Ryan Booth had casually made while walking down the street, like he usually does. In case you don't know, he's a stupidly talented director, photographer, cinematographer, artist, creative, and friend. We did a small experiment a while back called American Machines, some of you may know, which is still one of my favorite things I've ever done. Basically inspired by Robert Frank and robots. But this piece of art I'm talking about is called Year of the Snake, and while I generally try not to be the guy who drools over what did you shoot that on, I was fairly mesmerized by the look. It wasn't a secret, it was in the description. Blackmagic Pixis, talking about gear we don't need but want, and the Blazar Remus 45mm 1.5 anamorphic lens. I was in love. Now, I wasn't exactly looking to replace my Pocket 4K anytime soon, but this lens, wow. Oh, I'll drop a link to Ryan's channel and the Year of the Snake video in the description below. Be sure to check it out. Okay, back to the lens. I started watching any and every video I could find on it. Generally speaking though, I'm not a very pro anamorphic guy. Don't get me wrong, they can be great, but I find a lot of negatives to them more than pros. They're often big, expensive, their close focus is horrid, and flares, pixel aspects, and lens breathing are no fun in VFX. And I think cinematographers can often lean on them as a crutch a little bit, just like film. But this lens, something about it, partnered with the Blackmagic sensor, was just doing it for me. Now, don't get me wrong, I have the Rokinon DS Cine lenses and I swear by them. Their size to cost to performance ratio is unmatched, and I'm typically against shooting anamorphic for ambiguous reasons like cinematic or painterly. But this was different. So after some research, I determined the specific things that were drawing me to it. The size, it was on par with my beloved Rokinon Cine lenses. The cost, a fraction of what even cheap anamorphics go for. But specifically, the barrel distortion on it was gorgeous. Quick distortion guide for you non-nerds, barrel distortion pulls the image in at the edges and pin cushion pushes the image out. Okay, back to the lens. I didn't need it at all. I had 5 perfectly capable great lenses. Didn't matter, I literally dreamed of this lens. It was getting pretty bad. So once again, I pulled the trigger. And oh my god, the moment I put this lens on the Pocket 4K, it's like the creative heavens opened up. Every single excuse that had ever been before me parted ways, and I felt like the stories I wanted to tell, I suddenly could. So let me explain what I meant by loving the barrel distortion on the Remus. Typically, an anamorphic lens will give you a better depth of field response than a spherical lens. What I mean by that is, the wider your lens, the less prominent the depth of field, meaning the area that is sharp is bigger. With anamorphic, because of the D-squeeze factor, let's just use a 2 times anamorphic as an example, because of that factor of 2, your 50mm lens has the equivalent field of view of a 25mm lens, but the depth of field characteristics of a 50mm lens. So you get a wider field of view and better depth of field. Then, when you add barrel distortion on the edges of your frame, things become much more vertical and compressed rather than smeared and stretched out, and therefore, at least to me, much more interesting. Okay, nerd rant over. I mean, I shot footage of my family in the backyard one evening and just wanted to make a movie right then and there. Everywhere I pointed it, I was blown away. Damn, you'd think this was a sponsored video. So that single lens inspired me to stop making excuses and finally start this channel. So, I'd say it was worth it. Placebo is a hell of a drug, but when it works, it works. Now, I'm not telling you to be irresponsible and lose your house because you suddenly want an Ari Alexa. There needs to be some level of restraint. Everything I've bought, as unnecessary as they did or didn't seem at the time, I could afford. Maybe just barely, but still afford them. They weren't the sort of gamble that would have cost me or my family our home or livelihood. So I guess what I'm trying to say at the end of all this is that sometimes that gear you may not really need be it that camera, instrument, lens, or whatever, may not just do the job they're designed to do. It may end up reigniting a passion, teach you something you didn't know you needed to learn, or just plain inspire you to move past all the excuses you put in your way. Gear will never equal skill, but if something makes you feel like you could take on the world, you just might. As always, thanks again for watching. Until the next one.